Welcome to the WorkJoy Jam podcast. I'm Beth Stallwood, your host and the founder of Create WorkJoy. In this episode, I'm so pleased to be joined by Denise Nurse. Now, I was lucky enough to hear Denise speak at an event that I was the MC for. And I just loved her background, her thoughts, what she's doing now, and how closely aligned she is to everything around WorkJoy. So I asked Denise to come on here, and I'm so pleased that she has made the time to make it happen. She's got such an interesting and varied background and really advocates for that, finding the direction and going with it, and you're not stuck wherever you are to start with. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I know I really enjoy getting stuck in with Denise, hearing her story, hearing her advice, and all about the amazing things that she is working on now, which are some real purpose-led projects that I think we can all appreciate are amazing things. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I'll pop on at the end with some summaries of my thoughts and takeaways. Hello and welcome to the WorkJoy Jam. This episode, I am joined by the incredible Denise Nurse, and we're going to talk about loads of things about her amazing and varied career, and also a bit of a positioning around talking about what happens when somebody says no, or you get a bit of rejection. So a bit of a vibe for today. But before we get diving into our chat, I would love to hand over to Denise, and for Denise to tell us about her story so far and how you got to where you are today. So Denise, over to you.
Thank you so much, Beth. It's a real pleasure to be on the podcast, and I love the spirit of it. Joy, it's one of my themes. So totally happy to be here. So I'll try and keep it brief, but who am I, where am I, what am I doing? I'm many things right now, and I've had a varied career so far. So I'm coming up to being 45 this year, and so far I've managed to become a solicitor. So I'm a commercial lawyer, an entrepreneur. I've run a business for several years, which I sold a couple of years ago, and I've been a television presenter. And those are my three main careers. Plus, I've done lots of other things: waitressing, receptionist. I think I've taken the coats at a club door for quite a while. So done all sorts. I'm also a mum and a wife. So mum to three children, and we live down in southwest London. How did I get here? I was born and raised in the East End. My parents are from the Caribbean. Had a great education, and my mum and dad were big on education. I was one of those lucky people who had an idea quite young of what I wanted to do, which was to follow a career in law. And I know not everyone has that. But about the age of 14, public speaking, reading, those are the things that I liked doing, and law seemed like a good career option. Also, coming from, the East End is lovely and where we lived, but I always wanted more, and I was looking for a career where I would have options and where I could earn some money. And law looked good. So off I went to become a lawyer. I worked in the city, and then I worked for a company, Sky, and was busy making my way along the career path, and then did a U-turn and became a television presenter.
And that is not kind of your standard when you're in law, is it? So thinking here, everyone thinks that there's like a standard career, and you're like, oh yeah, and now I'm a TV presenter.
It's so weird, because now I'm going to show my age a bit, and I've got some obscure references, but there was a chat show host called Jerry Springer, and I think he is a lawyer, and kind of back in the 90s when he
was very famous in the 90s. I remember him well.
Very famous and a bit odd, and he was a lawyer, I think. And then there was Clive Anderson, who's also he used to present Whose Line Is It Anyway, and I think he's got a Radio 4 program now, and I love him. He's a barrister, and those are both programs I used to watch a lot. So TV has always been a big theme in my life, and I liked the idea that these lawyers, always interested me. These lawyers, how have they also got these jobs? Never thought it would happen to me ever, but they ran a competition called Sky Talent. looking for talent amongst their staff of people doing anything but the TV. And I won. So hey ho,
Amazing.
I became a weather presenter, a travel presenter, and ended up presenting Escape to the Country on the BBC. Um, and at that point, I decided the best way to be able to follow the path of that new career and enjoy my legal career was to set up my own law firm. And so I created a firm called Hailbury with my co-founder, Dr. Janvi Patel, a long-time friend and fellow lawyer. And that was all about flexible working. And we can dive into that as well. But it was all about
Yeah.
flexible working. It was all about having varied careers and allowing lawyers to really take control of their career and to give employers different options of how to engage really talented people. And that was a success, and it grew and grew until we sold it 2 years ago to a US consulting firm. And so that's left me here, a lady with many projects now. So, and I'm sure we
You've
can do.
not just rested on your laurels.
No, I intended to, and then the pandemic happened, and that what that's meant is the traveling around the world and hanging out with my friends, the two things I'm not allowed to do.
Yeah.
So instead, I founded a charity, a non-for-profit organisation, and I've started my new career plan. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Amazing. It's such an interesting and fantastic career, and what a way to kind of take an opportunity and create a whole new world for yourself, both in the TV presenting and thinking, how do I keep my original love of law and do something with it, and founding a whole business from it. Amazing.
It's one of the things that I love doing is imagining what good would look like. Like if I could, what would that be? What would I do? How would I do it? And then once you've kind of thought about it, you think, well, why am I not doing that? Why not? Is the next question that
Yeah.
comes up. And what do you have to do to make that happen? That's one of my favorite things, and it's been a bit of a theme. The older you get, you start to notice the themes in your life,
Mm.
and that's one of mine.
I love that idea. And when we relate that, yeah, when you relate that to the theme of joy, and you're thinking about what could good look like, and then just go and make it happen.
What brings me joy? What brings me joy? How can I do more of that?
Love it.
That's what I like to do.
Really interested, Denise, in this point about imagining what good would look like and then building it, and that being a bit of a theme for how you lived and worked. So tell me a bit more about that process that goes on in your head.
Um, yeah, that process. It's something I've noticed I do, but it's something I think I've always done. So I gravitate towards things that I enjoy. I'm happy to work hard, and sometimes not everything is fun all of the time. That's fine,
No.
but I do gravitate to what I enjoy, and if I can't see it or it doesn't exist, then I look to create it. So, for example, when I got to university, and I went up north to Liverpool, beautiful city, and I love it. But coming from where I grew up, where it was very multicultural, getting to Liverpool University, it was really not multicultural at all. I was the only, I was one of four black students out of 200 on our law course, and the only one in my halls of residence, and I could give you plenty of
Yeah.
examples. But there was also no African Caribbean society. And I know what would give me joy is having opportunities to mix with other people who I identified with in that way, just like all the other societies. And so we created one. I found someone else on campus. She was a politics and economics student, and we created one. And it was the same with Hailbury, and it was the same with wanting to have a TV career and wanting to pursue a legal career. There wasn't an obvious way of doing that, so I created one. And so to me, it just feels like an obvious and logical next step. It doesn't exist. Why not? Because no one's
Yeah.
made it. Okay, let's make it.
It's a real entrepreneurial mindset, that, isn't it? But it sounds like you've had it for a long time, and it's been there, and it comes to you thinking, well, if it's not there, let's do something about that.
Yes. I think it's a little bit of impatience as well.
Love that. So using
Maybe
something to
control
kind of
freakery.
drive
I
it.
don't know. It's definitely liking to create my own world. So if I'm relying on someone else, I'm a fierce independent. So I was raised um, to be able to look after myself and to be independent. And my family really instilled it in me to get an education, so you can have choices, you can have opportunity.
Mm,
And my grandmother is, a really big influence. Both my grandmothers were. One passed 5 years ago today, actually, and the other is still living. And they're really strong influences, and always kind of instilled that you can do what you want to do, even if it's tough. You just have to find a way. So I'm very blessed to have had that as my upbringing,
mm,
um, and that's how I find my joy. If it's not there, then create it, and
create
that
it.
is the joy of being a human. You get to do that.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because when we talk about work joy, one thing I notice a lot is people are waiting for other people to give
Mm,
them joy. They're waiting, as you say, like the impatience maybe drives you, but it's the opposite of that idea of, oh, well, I'm waiting for my boss to do something that will make me happy, or I'm waiting for a project to land on my desk that makes me happy,
yes.
or I'm waiting for a community, like you're saying there about there was none. There wasn't the Afro-Caribbean social networks there. What do you do there? People are waiting for these things to happen versus going, hang on a minute, if it's not there, why don't I create it? And creating some joy in your life is what we're all about. So loving that idea. But also one of the things you said that I just really want to pick up on is you kind of do the work. You have to do the work. And it's not necessarily easy to create it because you have to do stuff. But
Mm,
if you do the work, you will find the joy as well.
exactly, and that is the fun bit. For me, there is that taking responsibility for an ownership for what you want, as you say, waiting for others to do it. I'm all for giving other people an opportunity to do things as well and seeing how things unfold. But if not, why not try to create it? And the
Mm,
beautiful thing is, I think there's so many of us on the planet. So the chances are, if you're looking for this, whatever it is, someone else is too. So by the very
yeah.
act of you starting, of you getting out on the road, you will start to attract other people who are also looking for the project or the opportunity or whatever it is, that you're yearning for. And so you start to create a community and you get to know other people, and that in itself brings joy. And then the
Absolutely.
work is work, but it isn't as hard as feeling impotent, feeling unfulfilled. So I would take putting some effort in and doing some work any day over those feelings.
I totally agree. And I think the thing around if you find the thing that you really want and you really believe in because you think it's missing in the world,
Hmm.
the work does become more joyful because you have some purpose behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. This thing about purpose, I think sometimes people get tripped up thinking I need to have this one big passion
Yeah.
and I should know exactly what it is and I should have known when I was 14 and that's the end of it. And if I haven't, I've missed it and that's it. And I really don't believe that. I think you find purpose in everything you're doing, and seeking joy is a great way of finding that, getting in
Absolutely.
tune with how am I feeling right now? Am I enjoying this? And is this fun? Do I like it? Am I relaxed? Am I feeling my best self in this situation, or when I work in this way, or when I work on those projects? And really getting to know yourself about
Yeah.
what you like and where you're at your best, is a great first step.
Yeah, and it's different for everyone, and that is part of the joy of it as well, as there are so many opportunities to find it, and what gives you joy might be slightly different to me. And I agree. I think sometimes this purpose thing feels like that big thing you're supposed to have had since you're a teenager, and you're supposed to know and live your entire life against it. But I don't know about for you, but for me, my purpose changes, and I have more than one purpose going on at the same time usually as well. Um,
Absolutely.
and that's but that's okay. But if you don't know what your purpose is, try following the joy and
Mm,
see where it leads you, see what it tells
yes.
you about yourself, and then keep doing that. And if the other thing I think about joy, and especially work joy, is it really changes over time. It changes depending on where you are in your life and what is important to you now versus 10 or 20 years ago, and allow it to change. And sometimes
Mm,
I think we're kind of like, oh, you know, in your career in law. You could have continued and continued and continued on, but what are the other opportunities? What are the other things that you want to do? And one thing I really wanted to talk to you about is when you talk about your career, it's amazing and I love it, and it's so varied, and you've obviously followed your joy and followed some of the things you're passionate about. But also, one of the things about joy is sometimes we don't get exactly what we think we want. And
Absolutely.
that whole, and I know I was so lucky to hear you give a talk about this. And I thought, wow, that is something that our listeners would love to hear about. Is this idea of when we get rejected and that awful feeling of rejection, which is horrible. It's like, oh, right in the pit of your stomach, someone doesn't want me, or someone doesn't want the thing that I'm doing, or, you know, the no's. And I loved what you're talking about here, and I'd love to dive into that about understanding how a no can actually be a really useful thing to leading you to the life and the work that you want to do. So can we dive into that for a little bit?
Yeah, let's do it. You know, the talk you referred to, when I was writing that, what occurred to me as I was trying to find useful things to share about my journey, because is that when I retell it in my own head, it's all really positive. And so when I say it out loud as well, it's like, oh, and then I did this, then I became a presenter, then I set up my business, then we sold it. And it's as if there was this, you know, this really clear path, and I just set off on it and walked in a
Yeah.
straight line and got there. Because at the end of it, that's the bit I remember. I kind of discard all the no's after that. When I sat down and started thinking about it, I was like, oh yeah, how did we get from A to B to C? And then I remembered all the things, all the bits that didn't work, and how many no's there were along the way. And the fact is, that I only ever needed one yes each time. I just needed one yes, and you don't get that yes without asking and getting some of the no's. So, for example, when I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, and go and do a law degree, I was a straight A student at the time at my school and had the opportunity to apply to Cambridge. And so that's where I wanted to go. I also applied to Nottingham and Bristol, I think, and Liverpool. And my careers officer said, oh, you should, you know, just in case you don't get the grades, you should have a backup plan. And then made me apply to all these universities that would have accepted much lower grades, which kind of diluted in my head what I was doing. And I think that was kind of something I wouldn't advise necessarily. It was kind of watering down and preparing me to make another plan rather than sticking with my plan and being prepared to be rejected and learn from it.
Yeah.
And so what happened is I went in there and made those applications, and I got a no. I got a no from Cambridge. I got a no from Bristol. I got a no from Nottingham. And each letter came in, and I was like, oh wow, I thought I'd prepared, and I thought I put in a pretty good application. And then Liverpool said yes. And honestly, it was the best thing. I had a great time there. And the other three just dropped away after that. Same thing when I was applying for my training contract. I know so many young lawyers are going through this. Um, I did spend time to think about where I wanted to go, but at one point I thought I was going to not become a lawyer anymore. I was finding it really tough. I was about to walk away from, well, not walk away, but I was thinking I'll finish my degree and go and do something else. But in the meantime, what would good look like? My favourite question. Well, if I was going to stick with it, what I'd want to do is work for a firm where I could practice family law and intellectual property, which is quite an odd mix. So where can I do that? So I looked, and there were 5 of the big firms that would do it. And I applied to the 5 just to see, and got back 4 rejections. And 1 yes. And that was Charles Russell, where I then went on to have my training contract. Again, at the end of that journey, I wanted to join their IP department. They said no, but that led me to look outside and think, well, how else can I get there? And I ended up working for Sky. And as I've already explained, that opened a whole new world for me.
Yeah.
And this theme has continued. You know, when we set up Helpfree, I have millions of stories of no's. You know, clients saying no, who then went on to be our biggest clients, lawyers saying no, and they didn't want to join us, and then they did. And not always did they change their mind. Some people don't. But what happens, I think, is you once you're in it and you try, then the no just becomes more information. It's like, they said no. Right. Why? What didn't work there? How would I try this again? And you try a different approach. But you don't get that information if you never ask. And one of the things I notice when I have conversations with people, that sometimes they're so afraid of the no and the rejection, they don't make the ask. They don't step out and see. And so they're afraid of something that hasn't even happened yet. And all that happens is someone says no. That's it. That's it. They say no, and I like to think, well, you said no because there's something better for me. That's fine. You said no because there's something better for me. And I heard this great thing the other day. It's an American TV presenter, and Robin Roberts, and she said that when you ask for something, the answer is sometimes, it's either not yet, it's yes, not yet, or there's something even better for you. And I love that. So
that's a really good way of thinking about it.
Yeah. So if you just need to kind of create in your mind how you're going to deal with the no. Like if you take that as a personal rejection of you and everything, then you will never move forward. But if you take it as information that you can use, if you take it as just a step, because somewhere down the line there will be a yes, that's all good as well. I think there's also the KFC Colonel, what's his name? Colonel Sanders, is that what it is?
I think it's Colonel Sanders.
Yeah, he made the KFC recipe. I think, the story goes there were like 1,000 attempts at that recipe before he got his original trademark patented one. So you just need one yes. You just need one yes.
And it's so interesting, and I definitely hear the same things that you do here around. Actually, sometimes we're so scared of rejection, we don't even try looking or saying or being clear about what we want or trying, because the idea that it might not work. But that's real life. There are things that might not work in real life. There are things that go wrong. But and that thought that is kind of ringing in my ears of, you just need one yes. You don't need everyone to say yes. No. You need one yes.
Need one, and then that leads to the next, and that leads to the next. And it's such an important growth tool. And I think for most people, there'll be the thing that you've created a story in your head about that you're scared about that you won't try because you've decided, I'm scared of rejection and I might fail, or they might say no. But if you ask yourself, what things am I willing to try where I'm not worried about it, you'll find there's an example somewhere. So we do have the skill set usually. We just haven't applied it in a different area. Yeah. So it'll be, I'm teaching my son at the moment, he's 8, and we're talking about this and resiliency and trying new things. And, we talk about when he first went, he loves swimming now, but the first time we were going for swimming lessons, he didn't want to go. He was so worried that he was going to hate it. And it's like, well, you just have to have a try and see if you like it. He felt the same about football. He still doesn't like that, but you've tried it now, so now you can make it.
There is something, isn't there, about if you take that kind of childlike mindset of, actually, when you're a kid, and maybe because of your parents or because of at school, you try loads of new things, and you don't have an expectation necessarily at that young age of having to be good at something.
Yes.
You can just try it.
Yeah.
And there's something for me that I think, as we get older, we get worried about not being good at stuff. And the thing is, no one's ever good at anything the first time they try it. There is really no such thing as like natural brilliance that you just suddenly try something new. It's all a learning process.
Absolutely. And you don't get the joy out of it without the learning process. If we could all just magically do everything brilliantly the first time, we wouldn't be on the planet. No, it's not how it works.
It's not how it works. And it would be also really boring, because in the learning is some of the joy, isn't it? So you think about the learning process, suddenly getting something, and you're like, I've been practicing this for months now, and now suddenly I get it and I can do it and I feel really amazing about it. I also think the learning process is one where we connect with other people, which is often where people get their joy from, whether that's like a hobby or at work or whatever it is that learning process is so important.
And that shared experience.
Shared experience, shared joy within something, shared passions. You think about it, even if, like, from a parenting perspective, when your child suddenly can do something, it's like, oh, hang on a minute, that's their first steps. How exciting is that? They didn't just suddenly get up and walk. There was a whole process involved in making that happen. It just took time. And so that's something for me. And I think, I don't know if you feel this, but there's so much, if you look at social media and the impact that that has on our lives, and social media can be great. It can be fantastic, but it can also be quite damaging to what we think. Is on social media, we often see the outcome of all the hard work, but not the hard work that goes into something.
Absolutely. There are so many examples of that so I tend not to spend too much time on certain social media platforms for that reason, just because I like dipping in a little bit and having a look, but you don't want to get such too far into this world where you think everyone else's life is perfect when it's just snapshots and you're not seeing all the work behind it.
The perfect makeup, the perfect setup, the perfect home office in the last year, the perfect everything. It's like nobody is perfect, and nobody gets anywhere without kind of putting the hard yards in or putting the work in.
And the other
that
thing
learning
is,
process,
it really brings it builds a good muscle in you. It builds confidence in yourself. When it happens, when you haven't done the work, you're not always sure, and when you don't acknowledge that you've done the work as well, I should say this for those with imposter syndrome, you're not always sure that you really deserve whatever it is, or that you don't have the confidence in your abilities. But when you've done that training, you got up every morning and you went for that run and you earned your marathon, then that's something within you, that's an inner strength and resilience that is worth more than the goal of running the marathon. That muscle that you build up, that inner confidence in your ability, that you can go from zero to hero or zero to accomplishment of a task, is worth the effort of doing it.
Absolutely. And it's so fascinating, when we talk about these processes and putting the work in and kind of doing it, is that limiting ourselves with our careers or with our levels of joy or whatever we're trying to do, is if we think so much about what could happen if somebody says no, or what could happen if it all went wrong, or if I failed at it, is we miss out on all the learning you get from rejection or from failure.
Exactly.
And that missing out bit means that we hold ourselves back.
We hold ourselves back, and just as you were talking there, I'm thinking about as an employee, and so I've worked, as I said, in various roles, and for me, one of the amazing things about being an employee is there's this business that's set up for you. There's this environment that you're in where you almost get to play a little and try this out. In a world that someone's already created for you. So you've got access to other people, you've got access to a business that's already there doing something in the world. So you have space to try different things, to create a group, to try a project. And that's something I always find joy in, that at work. Like, you've got your job, whatever that is, and doing that well is obviously important. And then I always like to stretch myself and do the extra project, not for no other reason that it will be something I would enjoy doing, and I've got an opportunity with resources and people to do that. So why not get stuck in to whatever that is? And there are so many lovely opportunities in organizations to do that, whether it's doing CSR work or it's just stepping outside of your comfort zone. And one of my favorite things when I worked at Sky as a lawyer, so I am quite nosy and like to know how things work. So I have my role, which is, at the beginning, I think I was supposed to do property and litigation, and then I'd wander around looking to see what else was going on.
A little research. What's going on around
Research.
here?
What do you do? What happens over here? What happens in this section? Oh, well, if you ever need any help, I would, happily get involved, or just send me something so I can get to understand what you do. Being really curious, and just experimenting. I think, a workplace is a great place to do that, to take on that. It is like being at school. It's the extracurricular.
I've literally written down the word extracurricular, because I was going to say, in all the workplaces that I've either worked in as an employee or work with now in a kind of consultant world, is the people who I often find have the most work joy are the people who do the extracurricular stuff as well as their job really well. So they're the people who are, taking part actively in a staff network, or who are doing some volunteering, or who are simply doing what you just said there, which is getting curious about what goes on across the business and what's happening. And they make new connections and build new networks and just better understanding of their world at work. So I definitely think, people are always encouraging kids, aren't they, to do the extracurriculars
Yes.
and kind of go and do the sports or go and do the art or go and do some music or whatever it is. It's like, do the same thing at work.
Exactly. And like you said, it's like there's this narrowing through the school education process where you start off like that and then it gets narrower and narrower and narrower, and you end up at university and you're supposed to like pick a subject and you do a PhD and you've narrowed it. And always through that process, while it's great for becoming an expert, and I love that, and I know there are some people who are really suited to being subject matter experts and being quite specific on something, and having extracurricular, whether it's within work or without, is important as well. So I've always kept up my interest in dance, and that's my outside work joy.
Yeah.
And I really encourage that, whatever your additional pursuit is, to really get involved in that and just access those other bits of your brain, because that feeds back into your work joy. And I like to think of the idea that your life partner doesn't have to be your everything. There'll be some things that you'll really get on well together with, and there'll be other things where you've got your friends that really like, like rom-coms, and your partner doesn't, and
Yeah.
that's who you go to the cinema to watch that with.
Yeah, absolutely.
and so expecting your job to do everything and bring you all the joy might not always work.
Yeah. And it also, like, sometimes we forget, don't we, that we are not just our work. And it's so interesting that, when we introduce ourselves, we often talk about what we do for work, but not what we do outside work. And yeah, our lives are so important and what we do in them. And I've spoken to loads of people recently, and I think it's partly because of the pandemic, but also partly as we get older and we get more responsibility and we have to do that annoying thing called adulting, is that we actually sometimes just completely lose sight of our hobbies. I mean, hobbies
Yes.
is a funny word, extra, whatever it is, like, oh, I don't have time for hobbies. So, and you're talking there about, different people for different things. Is, as an example, one of the things I love to do is I love to be in like Amdram plays and do singing and all that kind of stuff. I love all that kind of
Love
stuff.
it.
My husband would rather gouge his own eyes out with a hot poker than go anywhere near that. But that's not what we do together.
We must be married to the same person.
I think we
Exactly the
might
same.
be. But he literally is like, I don't even know if I could come and see you, because it's that I find it that cringeworthy, this whole thing. And I'm like, in that world, I turn into a total lovey, and I absolutely love it. But that's the thing, is that it doesn't have to be something you do together.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be something you do with your kids. It can be something that's just for you.
Yes.
And the joy you get from that. And I did a Zoom call the other week with my friends from the Amdram group, and we were having a proper old rah and laugh around everything. The joy you get from that then filters into everything else you do that week.
I come back
that
so much happier,
moment.
Beth, when I've been to, like, I've really been missing my dance classes. So we've got a local our local gym, and they do this dance class, and the teacher, she used to be in Pan's People, again showing my age, like she was
Oh,
like
wow. So she's like a legend of like
yeah,
the telly.
just like on top of the pops, dancing in leotards, and but that also gives away her age a little bit as well. So most of the people in the class are like senior citizens who've already retired, and then there's myself and a few others in our like mid-40s who find an afternoon a week to go along. So, and we have so much fun. We dance to show tunes, we dance to hip hop, we dance
Love
to
it.
salsa, whatever it is, and we just rock it out for like an hour. And beautiful fun. My husband, my family, my kids would be so embarrassed if they could see me.
It's so interesting, though, that idea that just because someone else is embarrassed by it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Because if it gives you joy, who cares what
Right?
anyone else
And
thinks
they get the
around it?
benefit. I come back home buzzing. Happy mummy.
Yeah, They get the benefit of it. They don't have to get involved.
Yeah.
You can just make
In fact,
the
please
most
don't.
of it.
Please don't come. It's my space.
But that's interesting, even on its own, thinking about kind of, if you're a parent and you're spending your life at work and then parenting, like giving yourself a little bit of space to do the one thing that brings you loads of joy that doesn't involve anyone else can be really lovely as well.
It pays dividends. It really does. I think it's a false economy when we don't do. I know for myself. I know for myself because I track this. When I don't do that, when you let it slip, when you realize a couple of weeks gone by and you haven't done those things that are important for you, whether it's at the moment my walk on my own or whatever with a friend, when I've prioritized everyone else first, it doesn't pay off
No.
in many ways. I get more tired, I'm more drained, I'm less happy, all for the sake of the 1 hour it would have taken to go do that. So I didn't really gain anything by, giving up that time to try and tackle other things, because in the end, um, you do a disservice to yourself and you actually end up with less energy. And I spend more time in my head when I do that, I find. So it
Yeah.
fascinates me the amount of time we can spend when we're going, I'm too busy and I haven't got time to do things. And if you actually look at it, a lot of the time is just time you spent thinking about things. Like, what
Yeah,
were
time
you
you spent
doing?
or overthinking,
Overthinking.
like,
Oh, I spent
what
about
am I
3
doing
hours
here?
worrying about that. That was worth it.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that actually time, and we always there's all that, I'm really busy, I don't have the time, but when you make the time, you find the time for it, right? It's up to
Yeah.
you to manage your own time, and we've all got the same amount of hours in a week, but what do you do with it, and how does it help you with the stuff that you have to do if you do the things that you want to do, that you love to do? I think it helps in everything. So whether that extracurricular is a work thing, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a whatever it is you do, just find the time and make it happen, build it in. And you're so right, because if you come back with the joy of the spirit that you've had, that can last for a few days. And I always think that when you get some joy in your life, it's really catching. So people feel it, they get it, you're in a good mood, passes on a good mood. If you don't go and do it and it makes you feel a bit gloomy, like the work gloom is what I call it, is you then pass the gloom on, don't
Oh,
you? So you'll be,
yes.
for me, if I haven't had any outside time, if I haven't had a little bit of personal space, if I haven't been able to do some of the things that bring me joy, I get like really moody and a bit snappy with people, and then that passes on, and then that just gets into a bit of a cycle of versus, oh, we could actually be having some fun now if I'd have just spent 20 minutes going for a walk.
And that's it. And when you realize that and you recognize that, it's so important, isn't it? And you
Yeah.
get that aha, oh yes, where has this come from? She didn't have her walk.
She didn't
Okay,
have
I'm
a
going
walk.
now.
Get yourself outside.
Bye,
It's like,
everyone.
she didn't do her dancing this week. She hasn't been
Exactly.
able to be a drama queen. She hasn't been able.
She
Yeah.
hasn't had the outlet.
This energy needs to go out somewhere, and it's not
Yeah.
coming out the right space at the
It's
moment.
not. Yeah, everyone's head's getting bitten off today.
And I probably will, preface this with also the fact that during the last year, some of those things have not been possible. And I feel like, people are talking about Zoom fatigue or lockdown fatigue or whatever it is that we're having at the moment. Some of that is because, like, so many people, I reckon probably 95% of people get their joy from being with some other people.
Yeah,
And we spent a lot of the last year with very limited amounts of people.
you're absolutely right on that. And it has been tough. I do not deny that. And I often think about, I'm finding it tough, and I have plenty to be grateful for. Everyone's fine. We have a nice home. We have a nice garden. I have the privilege of, at the moment, not having to work, so I've had the time to do, to be around and do homeschooling. And it's been tough because I get my joy a lot out of seeing people and interacting. And I had a plan, and the plan went for the year.
Yeah.
I had a plan. I was going to have a year off, having kind of stopped working, and I was going to travel. I was going to see people, and having the thoughts that was taken away from me by the pandemic, and then by the government, and then by the rules, was not a helpful thought. It was not making me
No.
happy. When that starts creeping into me, it might be true. It might be true that, I've only got one room to live in and I can't do the things I want to do, and I haven't got haven't got a job, and things are tough. That might all be true, but thinking about it all the time doesn't always make you feel better. What I've I think that's what spurred me on during this time to create the projects that I've created.
Yeah.
So
So tell us more about these amazing
yeah.
projects.
So one of them, the first is Black Founders Hub, and that was born in the summer last year after the murder of George Floyd and all the attention on Black Lives Matter and the opening up of conversation, which I'm pleased to see is continuing as other things are coming to the fore, i.e. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and their conversation. But what that created for me was a realization that there are things that many of us hadn't talked about, and experiences that we weren't talking about. We were just getting on with it and accepting that things are just the way they are. Certain institutions just are the way they are, and you just get on with it. And again, while that may be true, I was like, well, does that make me feel good? How do we change that? And so Black Founders Hub is a way for me to share with others the joy that I had in creating and growing Hailbury. I worked with my friend Janvi Patel, so it was an Asian woman, a black woman of heritage, who were both British. And we built a law firm which, went from zero, literally, we self-funded the whole thing, to a multi-million turnover, employing people, working with lots of lawyers, working with FTSE 250 companies, and eventually selling to a US consultancy. And it was a great journey, but it was the two of us. And if we looked around for others that looked like us who were doing this journey, we just didn't know where to find them.
Yeah.
And so my question was, well, where I'm sure they're out there. I know there are lots of people in the professions who are qualifying and getting the experience. Why aren't they setting up their own as well? So Black Founders Hub is a peer network for Black founders of professional services businesses to come together so that they can peer coach each other on how to grow, scale, and create a legacy. And that's kind of taking back the narrative a little bit. So the narrative I felt last year was very much looking at the data and saying the outcomes for Black people are worse than everyone else.
Yeah.
The narrative is we do worse in education, we come out worst in social and healthcare, we come out worst in the property, we come out worst in terms of our ability to rise to the top echelons of companies, we get paid less, the list went on.
Yeah.
And while that may all be true, is it what I want to spend my time thinking about? No. I would rather think about, how do we change that? How do we encourage each other to take our talents and our abilities and grow those? Because by growing that and becoming economically empowered, we can help each other. We can employ more people. And the diversity everyone keeps talking about will be there. There will be Black owned businesses with partners and CEOs working at a certain level. The talent pool is there. You can buy the businesses and they can go and work, they can merge, it will just create its own economy. So at its basics, I mean, we launched, so I'm very excited. So I founded that with another friend who is a former city lawyer with her own legal practice now, or legal services business, focused on providing services to entrepreneurs in Africa. And her name is Rashida Abdullah, and then David McQueen, who's a leadership coach. And the three of us have just been working around this. That provided me with community and with a connection. So for the last it's longer than that now. It's coming up to a year soon. We meet weekly and we talk and then we build and create. We talk and then we create. And it's been an amazing touch point, which I would never have known was going to happen this year. But that's opened the door to a connection that I didn't think I would have had. And it's brought me a lot of joy. And we launched this year with our first cohort of 10 businesses. And each of those businesses, our mission is to help them get to 7-figure turnovers and beyond. And we're looking to have another 9 cohorts by the end of the year. So, looking for people to come join us. It's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic.
It sounds so brilliant and much needed, obviously. And what a great way to use the experience that you've had doing that to share it to help other people. And it feels like kind of that pay it forward thing. It's like, you've been through this, you've gone through that process, you've made a multi-million-pound company, and now you're like, right, so how do we share that, and how do we help more people do that in a really great supported way? And I'm just reflecting slightly on this as well, because both with your business when you created it and with this, is that you haven't done those things on your own. You've kind of got yourself a little squad around you of people, whether that's your co-founders or the people who are working with you in the Black Founders Hub, is getting other people and connecting with others who can help make it happen. Sounds like a big theme for you as well.
Definitely. And for a little while, I thought that was a negative thing, because when I look back at all the things I do, there's always a co-founder or someone I gravitate to working with. So whether it was the African Caribbean Society, I mentioned my friend Michelle Watts, who I founded that with, through to Hailbury, through to this, and various other examples. And I thought, was that negative? Am I not able to do anything on my own? I thought, well, why would I want to do things on my own? The joy is working together. I don't pretend to have the answer to everything. So building a team is a really important part for me. Building a team, finding people who have a shared mission, vision. We don't all approach, in all of those scenarios, we didn't all approach it the same way. We challenge each other on ideas, which I love, but we all know where we're trying to get to.
Love that.
And that's an
bringing
important
different
part.
skills to it, right? Because that's one of the
Yes.
great things about having a team, is that no individual person can do everything that's needed to create a business. You need people with different skills, different backgrounds, different perspectives on things.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, definitely. All of that is something I do a lot. So on the other thing I've been working on is the charity. So we've created founded a charity, and I'm working again with Janvi. So Janvi and I, and our third co-founder on this is Rachel Amos, who's another lawyer, and we are looking to use our experience and our knowledge from the commercial legal world to help families of children with special educational needs and disabilities navigate the education system.
Wow.
And that came about because of the pandemic, we have friends and family who are going through the system, and their children were disproportionately affected by the closure of schools. Like, it's been horrific for all the children. They've all missed out and they've all lost. But for children who had extra needs and extra services that they should have had, they were all taken away. And the legislation was actually put in place to support that only reasonable endeavours were needed to support them because it was a pandemic. And to me, that's just backwards. Actually, they're the most vulnerable. You go out of your way to make sure you look after them the most because there's a pandemic, not, well, they can have the least because there's a pandemic. So that's led to us connecting because we had a shared anger, to put it frank, about that. And then we started thinking, well, what can we do? How can we be helpful in this space? And on our journey of discovery, we've learned a lot about the frustrations of getting through what is essentially a legal process to get the help that these children are entitled to under law. So we've come together to find a way to create a platform, a technology platform that gets legal answers to parents and families when they're going through this quicker, easier, without the pain as much as possible that they go through to get what they're entitled to. And one of the things we've learned on that journey, and I still find this shocking, is that so many of these families have to go to tribunal to get the rights that they're entitled to, and in 97% of the cases they win, which sounds like, well, that's good, they win, but it means there's something wrong. If you go through the system,
right?
If you have to go through that, you have to pay the money to lawyers, you have to go through this to get what you should have had in the first place. Something is going wrong to be winning at that rate, and that's what we're tackling. So that's called Support Send Kids, and launching soon.
Amazing. I mean, again, sounds very needed, very timely, and using your amazing skills and platform to be able to help another group of people who really need some support, and amazing. So yeah, sounds brilliant. And yeah, I look forward to seeing both of those projects and where they end up, and I'm sure they'll be massively successful. And what we will do as well is we'll put the links to these projects in the show notes and on the social around the podcast, so that everyone can kind of click straight through and see more about what you're doing.
Thank you, Beth. And
Honestly,
just to,
I think, sorry, Karen.
I was going to say, just to bring it, both of those back to what we're talking about. Like, as I said, when I talk about things, I'm conscious that sometimes it sounds like, oh, and then I just did this, and then we just did that, and then it's this, oh, a charity's founded. There's a lot of work that goes in, but it's not something special. Like all of that, both those things are literally ideas with a couple of other people, and they were both created by, and Helby too was, literally this time it was sitting behind a computer and having a Zoom call once a week for an hour. That was it. We're going to meet up for an hour and talk about this issue and see where we get to. And if we enjoy talking to each other each week and we have some good ideas that we want to explore, then we'll keep going with it, and we'll keep going with it. And then it became something.
Yeah. It's just that start, isn't it? Start the conversation and see where it leads you to.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Exactly.
I love that. And I think we could totally talk for another 3 hours. But what I'd love to do, if we can, is to just do a little bit of a summary and then ask you a few quick fire questions. And I think some of the themes that I'm really hearing from you is like building resilience, that seeing every no that you get as actually some information to help you, and that you only need one yes. You only need one yes at each of these moments in time. I love that. About the importance of curiosity and getting interested and finding out more. That whole conversation about extracurriculars was brilliant, and remembering that that's an important part of life, whether it's through work or outside of work, and how it can really help your joy. And then this theme around when you're creating something, you've really kind of linked into what you're passionate about, what you can give, where you can go to, but just start the conversation and see where it leads. You don't have to have the answer. It doesn't come easily. You do have to put the work in, but just see where it can get you. Amazing. I love all of these themes. What I'd love to ask you now is a little bit more about you personally. So I'm going to dig into this for a few quick fire questions. And
okay, I'm ready, Beth.
If you're ready for
Let's
me,
do it.
is what is it for you that's always guaranteed to bring you a little bit of work joy?
Ooh, always guaranteed to bring me a bit of work joy. Other people, my colleagues. Always got to find someone fun. I have a band of great colleagues that I pick them up like little, souvenirs from everywhere.
It's so funny. I always say that I collect people, and then people think I'm some kind of like psychopathic murderer. It's like, no. It's just once I've met somebody, you're part of my network. You don't
You're
have
now
a
part
choice
of my
now.
tribe.
You're in
Yeah,
it.
it's like we work together.
I
How do you
love
know
that.
them? Well, we worked together 20 odd years ago.
Or I met them at an event and then stalked them until they'd come on my podcast for me. Like we've done here. So yeah, I love that. Other people, other humans, and it's a really interesting one for other people to think about. Is who are you surrounding yourself with? Are you surrounding yourself with people who bring you joy, who get you curious, who kind of share some of that passion that you have, or are you surrounding yourself with some mood hoovers? And if you are, get some different people and see how that works for you.
And Beth, that is a challenge now. I will accept that in my career so far, like when you're in an office with people, finding people, and so whether it's the person you sit next to, or as I say, I'm kind of wandering around and finding people I connect with, or joining the other group and finding people, it's easier now. My daughter is 22 and she's started her first proper post degree job during this pandemic, so she's never meets her colleagues, and that has been a bit more of a challenge to do that, to find your tribe. And so for employers out there, I think it's really important to keep working on ways, if we're going to keep remote working, of not just having the work Zoom meeting, but finding creative ways for your teams to interact and get to know each other.
Definitely. And that is a big challenge, I think, especially when it's slightly easier if you already know your colleagues, but starting remotely and never having met people in person can be really tough. So totally get that as a difficult challenge, and one that organizations, I think, need to keep thinking about in the future world. Right. Next question from me is, what book are you currently reading?
I am currently reading about 5 books at the same time, but top of my list is The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav. And it's a very yeah, it's maybe not for everyone, but anyway, it's a book that Oprah. So Oprah is someone who's like, she's my unofficial mentor. She doesn't know it, but she's my mentor.
Who doesn't love Oprah?
Exactly, and I get lots of guidance from her, and it's a book she's talked about for years, and she always says it was a really important book for her. Yeah, I've never read it, and I thought the other day, why have I never read that book? So I'm reading Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav, and I'm also reading Rise by Gina Miller, which is Gina Miller's stories, life lessons in speaking out, standing tall, and leading the way. So she's an activist.
Yeah.
And I'm about to start This Is Why I Resist by Dr. Scholler. I will say her name wrong now, so I need to get it in front of me. But I've just bought her book, so that'll be next.
Amazing. You sound a bit like me. I always have a pile of books I'm working my way through, and sometimes I think, would it be more effective to read one at a time, Beth?
It would be if I could have my old days back, where I could sit for a whole Sunday afternoon just reading. But I don't have that now, so I'm
No.
like, well, what am I in the mood for my
Yeah.
little half hour of reading
What's
session?
what book's going to bring me joy today? And it might be a different
Yes,
one to
it
yesterday.
might be
Love that.
different. Yes.
I'd love to know now, what's and I wonder if maybe this is one of your grandmother's bits of advice, because you said you're really influenced by them, but wherever it comes from, what's a really great bit of advice that you've had in your life that you always find yourself coming back to?
Yes, my grandmother's speaking to me loud and clear right now, the one who I said passed today 5 years ago.
Oh,
And she had this song that she listened to that we played at her funeral, and it's called One Day at a Time. Just take one day at a time. And that does come back. And whenever you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, or trying to look at everything, and it's all feeling too much, just remembering to take one day at a time. We don't know what tomorrow will bring.
no.
So focus on where you are right now.
Such
Enjoy
great
what you
advice.
can right now. So I love that.
Love it. So final quickfire question before I ask you a bit more about where to find out more about you is, what is one super practical, really easy to do, simple, quick thing that you could recommend to our listeners that they could kind of go and do today or tomorrow to bring them a bit more joy in their working life?
Oh, that's okay. So my immediate answer doesn't sound very joyous.
Okay, it's something to bring you joy. It doesn't actually have to be joyous.
Yes, something to bring you joy. So I've got to get better wording for it, because the word that came to mind was audit. Take a look at what you're doing. Stop for a moment. Just stop for a moment and think about it. Give yourself a moment and do a little audit of what are you doing? What do you do all day? What are you doing at work? What are you working on? And ask yourself that question. What brings me joy?
Yeah.
And then go do more of that. Do more of it.
Love that.
I think sometimes, sorry. I was going to say, sometimes we're so busy and we start telling ourselves stories about, this is difficult and I don't like this, or I'm not doing as well as I thought. And then when you do the audit and you write it all down, you always get surprises. I'm yet to not have this happen in my own life when I work with other people. You either look at it and think, oh, I'm actually doing a lot more than I realized, and so you are nicer to yourself, or you think, oh my gosh, I spend 90% of the time doing things I hate. How do I change that?
No wonder I'm miserable.
Yeah, no wonder. And it becomes clear as day because you took a moment and wrote it down. So yeah, the word itself doesn't sound very joyous, but I promise you the process is revelatory.
It certainly is. It's actually really interesting because it's the thing we do week 1 on the WorkJoy Way coaching program is let's track, we call it tracking, but auditing is the same thing. Let's track what brings us joy and what doesn't, and just see what that tells us. Look at the theme, see where it goes. So I totally love that as a bit of advice. So it's been amazing to talk to you, Denise, today. Thank you so much. The conversation has brought me lots of joy for today, and I'm sure will bring lots of joy to our listeners. Where can people find out more about you and the things that you're working on and connect with you?
So the best place at the moment is the blackfoundershub.com. www.blackfoundershub.com. Go there and you can join our mailing list, and it's open to everyone to join the mailing list. You find out what we're up to. And the other place I'm mostly on is LinkedIn, so you can find me there and connect with me. It's just Denise Nurse.
Fantastic.
So connect with me there, and that's where I tend to post what I'm up to.
Brilliant. We will also put those links into the podcast notes and on our social media as links so that you can go straight to them. Denise, thank you so much for coming along today, for talking to me. I could talk to you for hours and hours more.
Same here. It's been an absolute
joy.
pleasure. It's been so much fun, Beth. Really, really
Yeah.
good. And it's audio only, but hopefully they can hear my smile right the way through the conversation. Really a lot of fun.
Thank you, Denise. And perhaps we'll come back and speak to you soon.
Yeah, that'll be great. Love to.
Thank you. I had such fun and got loads of work joy out of having my conversation with Denise. And there are so many things that I think are amazing lessons to take away about maybe being redirected versus the no and feeling rejected. How do we use that as an opportunity to feel that it's actually not the right thing for me and I've been redirected to something that is better for me and the right thing for me? And I think Denise's career story and everything that she's done so far has really shown that that is a great attitude and way to consider life. There were also 3 key words that I've taken away that I think are so important for all of us. And the first one is around curiosity and how getting interested in things can make a massive difference in how we feel about work and what we do, how it can lead us down new paths and into new and interesting ways of thinking or doing or being or working. I love that. And curiosity is a value I hold really deeply. And I think it's one that we can all develop and do more of and be more interested in different things. The second word that really stood out for me was this one around resilience. And it comes back to being able to see those redirections, being able to know that you can do things, being able to take on new challenges and look at different ways of doing things. And the third one, which I really love, is the idea of the extracurriculars being sometimes where you find the joy. And whether those extracurriculars are work-based extracurriculars, like do you get involved with a network or some volunteering, or are you showing up in different ways at work to different things, but also to things like your hobbies, the things that you enjoy outside of work, and remembering that, and this is the way I would describe it, that joy catches on to different parts of your life, and the more you feel in any part of your life, the more it will by osmosis cross over into those other areas. If you go and do something you really enjoy the previous evening, the next morning at work, you might feel amazing and be able to give of yourself in a really positive way. So Denise, I just found her whole story really inspiring, but those 3 things really made a difference to me. And in her practical advice, and it's something that I always recommend, it's the first step on our coaching program, is to do that audit, to understand what it is that gives you some joy. So do that tracking and find out where it is, because once you know where it is, you're able to spot it, you're able to duplicate it, you're able to find it in more places more often. So huge thanks to Denise for being a fantastic guest. If you'd like to find out more about Create WorkJoy, do follow us on the socials. We're on the usual Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter and Instagram, all at Create WorkJoy, with WorkJoy all one word. If you'd like to find out more about my signature 16-week coaching program, head over to the website www.createworkjoy.com to find out more about the flow of that program, the one-to-ones, the group sessions and the solo experiments. And you can also find out more on the website about Club WorkJoy, which is a fantastic growing community of people who are all on this mission to create and cultivate more joy in their working lives and in the working lives of other people. Thank you for listening today. I'm Beth Stallwood. I really appreciate you having a listen in. Do go and listen to some of our other episodes, and hopefully you've been inspired to take something and to do something to create some more joy in your working life. Thank you.